Hey, good afternoon and welcome to an all-new hour of Law and Crime. I'm Vincent Hill. Again, we're covering Newman Raja. He's on trial right now for manslaughter and the attempted murder of Corey Jones. Newman Raja is a former police officer in the state of Florida. He shot and killed Corey Jones back in October of 2015. Joining me along with Catherine Smith is our very own host, Ashley Wilcott from Atlanta. Ashley, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Vincent. Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's always a pleasure. Hey, I want to get to you here in just a minute, but first we want to take a listen to part of that AT&T roadside assistance call that Corey Jones made on the night he was killed. Take a listen.
The discovery led to numerous other bodies.
All right, as we wait for that to queue up, Ashley, I know you've been following the case, of course, because you've been hosting as well. What do you think so far? The prosecution rested yesterday. How do you think they presented their case?
I think they did a good job presenting their case, Vincent. I'm stuttering because I find that the circumstances and the facts are pretty straightforward. To me, I think it's a hard case for the defense to prove that he was acting outside of the scope as a law enforcement officer and committed a crime. So I think the prosecution did well, but I think they had the right facts to present to do well.
Right. So here's the million-dollar question, and I'll ask you this first, Ashley. The defense is presenting their case. Do you think the defendant, Newman Raja, will take the stand here?
Do I think he should? Absolutely not. You've got the video that the law enforcement took after it happened, and he walked them through everything. That video is his testimony, and his testifying can only be used against him because not every word's going to be exactly the same. Do I think he's going to want to testify? I actually do, because I feel like he's out there and he's going to want to tell his story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see over to my right, the jury is coming in, the judge is back on the bench. So I think that courtroom is about to resume. But Catherine, let me ask the same question. Do you think Newman Raja will take the stand in this case?
I agree with Ashley. I think the general wisdom says he shouldn't, but I think he has a lot to explain. Right. And I do think that there is some things presented in the defense's opening that would suggest they almost need him to testify to fill in some of those blanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And court has resumed. Let's go right now. Okay, so that medical examiner is still on the stand giving live testimony. I want to bring my all-star panel, Ashley and Catherine, back on, and I want to toss to you first, Ashley. Why is it so important how far Corey Jones could have run after he was shot for both sides?
I think it's right. I think this testimony is twofold. Number one, it's so important because the officer is trying to say either he was a threat or he was doing something that I perceived as aggressive or threatening. So this person testifying after a catastrophic injury to the heart, a person can still run, move, do things, adds weight to the defendant's testimony that he was either fleeing or picking up the gun or trying to shoot him with a gun. It adds weight to those arguments.
Yeah, it definitely could. But the problem, I think, with that scenario, just my personal opinion, the gun was found about 20 yards from the vehicle. Corey Jones was found about 60 yards from the gun. So that imminent threat there that Catherine and I were talking about during this testimony is not there. Catherine, let me ask this. So this is very strange, at least in my opinion. Count one, manslaughter with a firearm. Of course, Corey Jones is deceased. And then count two, attempted first-degree murder. Where's the attempted portion of this? Is this from the first three shots?
It's hard for me to tell. I would think that the attempted is once the recklessness has been gone and once he had formulated a specific intent to then kill Jones, that's when the first degree comes into play, or the attempted first degree.
Got it. And that actually carries a life sentence. And of course, manslaughter in Florida can carry up to 15 years. So if he's found guilty of manslaughter, it's 15 years. And then of the attempted murder is up to a life sentence. We're going to take a quick break, get back into that courtroom there in Florida. Newman Raja on trial for the death of Corey Jones from back in 2015. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on the Law and Crime Network. Hey, welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. During the break, Stephen Nelson, the chief medical examiner, concluded his testimony. Now, one of the big questions that was asked during the break, you missed it. Could you tell the succession of shots to Corey Jones? And he testified, this medical examiner, Stephen Nelson, that there was no way to determine which shot struck Corey Jones first. And I think that becomes very important here. I want to bring my all-star panel back on, Ashley Wilcott and Catherine Smith. Catherine, let me toss to you first. And it's funny, we were actually talking about, hey, which bullet hit first, and then we're listening to the testimony a few seconds after the question. But do you think it's important which round actually struck first?
I think it's important, but it's not dispositive. I think that whether or not he was able to move and how far is important actually you could play it both ways. From my perspective, the more he was able to move and flee after the gun left his hand would show he was not an imminent threat. He was trying to flee. He was trying to get away from the threat, and therefore would not have justified any additional use of force by the officer. So, and my thoughts are the first that comes the arm injury, he drops the gun, and then he starts to flee. From that point on, you couldn't argue that he was a threat.
Well, that could be a good point, because Nelson also testified that when the forearm was shattered, he probably wouldn't be able to operate that arm. So that is a good point. Ashley, so let's talk about this imminent threat, because that's the level of articulation an officer must have when they're using deadly force based on the use of force continuum. Let's talk about the imminent threat. The gun is here, Corey Jones is here, and Raja's over here. So the imminent threat, I think, is the uphill battle that the defense has to get over here.
I agree with you, Vincent, especially given the fact, remember, it was 3 a.m., 2:30 a.m., so it was dark outside. It's chaotic because he's frantic, and I think, quite frankly, the victim in this case was frantic because he didn't know if this was some Joe Schmo who was there to kill him or was a law enforcement officer. So you have all these different elements that add to that, and so it's not a clear-cut, bright as day, oh, clearly he was the aggressor, or there was imminent threat and I had to shoot him again. Instead, I think he panicked and pulled the trigger 6 times.
Yep, I mean, that could be a fair assessment for sure. Now, I know when this case first hit down there in Florida, a lot of the local media was asking for body cams. Of course, Newman Raja was in an unmarked vehicle. He was not in uniform, and that department doesn't actually use body cams. So we have no video footage of what happened, but we do have audio. So let's take a listen to some of that audio in the moments leading up to the shooting of Corey Jones.
Stop. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Get your fucking hands up. Get your fucking hands up. Go.
Oh my gosh. There's gunshots.
Yes, 286.
All right, it's coming back. It's coming back on a 4-door Hyundai Gray.
Yeah, SUV.
Yeah, it's out of Lake Worth. It's not stolen or anything.
All right, man.
All right, stay on the phone. Where's the van
man,
at? Where's your van at? In the DoubleTree lot?
No. Right on the off ramp. You'll see my van right there. I'm walking back to my van. I'm backing my van in the car.
All right.
Hit at least 3 to 4 times.
All units, signal 33.
All right, you got your radio now?
Hotel.
No. Hold on. Not yet.
All right, I got units coming.
Mail and dreads on the off ramp behind
All right,
DoubleTree.
man, thank you.
Mail's outside.
All right, stay on the phone there, all right, buddy?
Temple. Send them where the mail went.
All right.
Guns off one. I'm by the radio now.
26. Rise
All right,
mail
hang
hit
up the
3 to
phone,
4
bud.
times. 51.
All right,
51 stage.
All right, the judge is on the stand. Let's go to court right now. Hey, and welcome back to an all-new hour of Law and Crime. I'm Vincent Hill. Of course, we've been covering Newman Raja in Florida. The defense just rested prior to the break. The judge has sent the jury home for the evening. Closing arguments will begin at 8 a.m. in the morning. Now, this is a 6-person jury in the state of Florida, not your typical 12-person jury. So we have 6 jurors and 4 alternates. Also, of course, we've been covering the Jason Carter case in Iowa. We expected that to begin today, but jury selection is still going on. He's on trial for the murder of his mother. That's right, the murder of his mother. Now, he was found guilty during a civil trial. 2 days later, after that verdict, police arrested him for that murder, and now he's about to start that trial. So we expect opening statements in that probably Thursday, because there's still a lot of jury selection going on. So let's switch gears and get back to Newman Raja, and let's look at a very special report from our very own Aaron Keller.
Reggae drummer Corey Jones was driving home at 3 in the morning when his car broke down on a Florida interstate. He pulled off to the side of an exit ramp. Shortly later, police officer Newman Raja pulled up in front of him. In this police video, less than 5 hours after the incident, Raja tells his side of the story, still dressed in the clothes he was wearing when he pulled the trigger.
I said, "Hey man, police, can I help you?" And the second I said police, he jumped back, and I clearly remember him drawing and pointing a gun at me. I saw that silver muzzle, and he had, I can swear on this, he had a Laser Max laser in the guide rod in the gun, and I saw that red light of that Laser Max flashing at me.
But Jones was on the phone with roadside assistance. Nowhere in the recorded call does Raja identify himself as a police officer.
Huh? I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Prosecutors are basically accusing Raja of lying, not just about identifying himself, but also about the laser sight he claims was on the victim's gun.
Did that appear to be a Laser Max laser to you?
It did not appear to be. That gun has an enclosed guide rod anyway. That gun wouldn't be compatible with the Laser Max laser.
Even fellow officers questioned Raja's tactics.
Is it paramount to the safety of the officer to make sure that they are clearly identifiable to a person that they're conducting a traffic stop on? Yes.
Raja was driving an unmarked van. Prosecutors say there's no way Jones would have known he was a cop.
He's wearing jeans. He's wearing an inside-out T-shirt, a hat, no badge, nothing. That's not how an officer talks to a citizen at 3 o'clock in the morning on the side of the road. He's actually chasing Corey Jones away from his vehicle.
Raja argues the shooting was in self-defense, since he claims Jones pulled a gun on him, which Jones usually kept in the glove compartment. For the Law and Crime Network, I'm Aaron Keller.
Hey, thanks so much for that, Aaron. Still with me, Ashley Wilcott out of Atlanta. Ashley, so here's something that we can't dispute here. Probably Corey Jones did pull the gun in self-defense, and the reason he did that is because here's a guy that pulls in front of his vehicle in the middle of the night and just starts walking up to his vehicle. So I think as your average citizen who's armed and licensed to carry a gun, and even if you're not licensed to carry a gun, you still have a right to defend yourself. There's no question here that Corey Jones actually pulled a gun on Newman Raja, but is that enough to say, well, I now am in fear of my life because I'm a police officer?
Well, that is the question, Vince, and I agree with you. And I don't think it is enough. I mean, I do think that, like you've said and you put out there, even if you're a law enforcement officer, if you're not in your law enforcement uniform and you pull in front of a car, you put yourself at risk. I think everything after that action is suspect and puts you at risk, whether you intend to be helpful or not. Because like you said, at 3 a.m., if I'm on the side of the road and that happened to me, I'd be terrified. And quite frankly, if I had a gun, I would shoot somebody, because don't approach me if I don't know who you are and I'm fearful for my life. So yeah. I think the beginning of these circumstances then escalated, and it started out bad, to be honest.
Yeah, and there's no doubt in my mind I would have actually pulled the trigger on Newman Raja if I was Corey Jones in that situation. Now, one of the things, actually, I listened to in that 911 call, and I've listened to it so many times, he said, I identified myself, he pulled a gun, and then he ran. So when he says Corey Jones ran, it's hard to articulate the imminent threat against your life if you say the individual ran. But this is what the defense is wanting us to believe, that there was that imminent threat there, Ashley.
Well, he ran, but it sounds like he ran the wrong direction. Like, it doesn't say he was running towards him. I've never heard testimony, and you can correct me if I've missed it. I've never heard testimony to suggest that the victim was actually running towards him. If he were, that's different. Then imminent threat or risk. But when there's no such testimony and he's running away, you know, I can't imagine there's any police training. There's none I know of. You would know better, that says if they're running away and they're not a threat to anyone else, yes, shoot them until they drop. I don't think that's policy.
Well, I think what they're trying to do there, Ashley, is claim, the fleeing felon. Like, well, he's a felon because he pointed a loaded weapon at a police officer. But the problem we know is that Corey Jones did not know he was a police officer. And to your point about running towards Raja, the proximity was so close. If you look at the van and you look at Corey Jones' SUV there, the proximity was so close that Corey really wouldn't have had to run towards Raja, because Raja even said, I came around my van and I started walking this way, and he pointed the gun at me. And one of the biggest problems I've always had since day one with this case and listening to Raja is police officers are trained to shoot center mass. And Raja says Corey Jones was hiding or concealed behind his door, and I don't see any bullet holes anywhere on that door. There's no shattered glass to suggest that Raja shot center mass when the threat was right there in front of him. So I have a huge problem with this story, and quite frankly, if I was a juror, Ashley, I would have a huge problem with this story.
And that's what I think. I think my guess is this is going to be a conviction of one of the crimes. And I think the reason is what you just identified, Vincent. His story, and it's right there. They're showing it now on videotape. He's reenacting for law enforcement exactly what he says happened. And it doesn't add up with the other testimony that's presented, with the medical examiner, with where the wounds are. It just doesn't all add up. And I think that's what may get a jury to convict in this case. That's just my prediction.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's keep in mind there's a lot of science with this case. In fact, we heard testimony from a firearms expert about firearm trajectory. Let's hear part of that testimony.
Place him in a certain place.
That's correct. I don't know the environment. I don't know where they're going to end up. I can't predict where the eventual resting spot will be.
Okay, and so turning to the trajectory, you said that there are limitations in that, correct, as well?
That is correct.
And when you did your evaluation or your, I guess, or your study of the log itself, you were trying to determine what happened to the bullet once it entered the log.
That is correct.
And from that, you connected the 2 points.
That's correct.
And you were able to determine how the bullet entered the log, and I think you described it as
drifting,
whatever. Okay. And however, you didn't have the benefit of knowing where the log was in space, correct?
That's correct.
In other words, you can tell, if we use this water bottle as an example, you can tell the horizontal way the round came in, correct? Mm-hmm. And then the vertical.
I know the horizontal and the vertical of the trajectory itself, but I don't know where the log is in relationship to the scene.
All right, Ashley, as a juror, is this testimony really important? Because at the end of the day, a juror just knows one thing. Newman Raja fired a gun. Corey Jones died as a result of that. So do jurors really want to hear about trajectory and where the bullet possibly could have landed? Why is this important testimony?
So it's important if there's a clear conclusion or a conclusion that either the prosecution or defense can draw. And so the conclusion of the testimony is important. Now, the issue I have is that it's dry testimony by the nature of the beast, right? And they get all that information out in front of a jury. It can be a little bit boring, but there's a way to present it so it's not as boring, so it's a little more riveting, because you do want the jury to hold on and hear the outcome, which is the conclusion of this is how I was shot or wasn't shot, and this is how it ties in. Again, they have to tie it into the theory of the case during closing argument.
Yeah, but, I think that the bigger issue is, whether the trajectory was there. I think that jury, again, was sent home. They're coming back at 8 in the morning for closing arguments. But I think as they go home and they go to sleep tonight, and we heard testimony yesterday from this audio expert that supposedly enhanced the audio, and he says you could hear 4 syllables right before Corey Jones says, but it's still not clear that those were police. And I always go back to, well, if Newman Raja said, hey, police, may I help you? I don't think Corey Jones' response would have been, It may have been, oh, I'm on the phone already with roadside assistance, or one of the Florida road trucks just left. As soon as the tow truck gets here, I'm going to leave. But I don't think if someone came out of their vehicle and told me, hey, police, may I help you? My response would be, I might even say, how do I know you're the police? Show me your badge or something, but not,
Well, I just don't know that we know the state of the mind of the victim, because he may have been asleep in his car. Look at the hour. And so maybe he'd fallen asleep. Maybe he was a little incoherent, trying to wake up and just said, huh? Like trying to figure out what was going on. I think that, like we know never to blame the victim, it's also hard to think about what the victim did or didn't say in response to anything that this defendant said or claims that he said.
Right. Well, we know Corey was awake because he was on the phone there with roadside assistance. But to your point, keep in mind he had been there for, I believe, 2 hours at this point. It's 3 in the morning. He had played at this club. I'm sure he was probably up the previous day working or doing whatever he does. So I'm sure his mind was probably just drained. Everybody at some point, your mind gets drained, and maybe he wasn't in his right mind to hear that. But the fact still goes to, man, it's 3:30 in the morning. I'm on the side of this road, and here's this guy that gets out in a inside-out T-shirt and some jeans and a hat, and I don't know who he is, and I'm going to defend myself. And I think as the jury of 6, when they ponder on this, I think they're probably putting themselves in that mindset. Hey, would I have done the same thing? Would I have acted the same way Corey Jones did on that night? Of course, it's up for the jury to decide. They're going home for the evening. They will be back for closing arguments tomorrow, and then we'll see what the jury comes back on a verdict. We're going to take a quick break. We have so much more to come here on the Law and Crime Network. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. Of course, we've been covering Newman Raja, a former Florida police officer on trial right now for the shooting death of Corey Jones back in October 2015. Corey Jones was stranded on the side of the road. He was actually on the phone with AT&T roadside assistance attempting to get a tow truck when Newman Raja approached his vehicle, and that's where things went horribly wrong. Newman Raja actually gave an interview statement video on the day of the shooting, about 4 hours after that. So let's take a look at some of the things he told investigators on that day.
Where you shot up there when he first pulled the gun at you, did you see if it had an impact on him?
I couldn't tell.
Did you notice? Were you watching him at the time?
My aim was, I was watching that gun.
Did he fall down?
No.
Did he stumble? Did he say ouch or shot me or anything?
Did he say anything at that point?
Nothing. Nothing was said. Nothing was, and he was just pointing the gun, right?
Okay. No body reaction to indicate something may have occurred?
No, nothing. Just flight at that point.
And which hand was he holding the gun in?
Right.
Okay.
All right, so that was part of the video interview that Newman Raja gave on the day of the shooting. Again, he shot and killed Corey Jones back in October of 2015. Still with me, Ashley Wilcott. Ashley, I want to point out something very important here, and maybe it's the ex-cop in me, maybe it's the private investigator in me, but there's some inconsistencies because on the 911 call, Newman Raja clearly says he's hit 3 to 4 times. Now, this is after he said I've lost sight of him, but he also said I got one man down. But you saw in that video statement where when the investigator said, was he hit? I don't know. Like, I couldn't tell. So how could you tell at the time of the 911 call, but 4 hours later you say, oh, I couldn't tell if he's hit? Because that's something, trust me, in that stressful environment that would have stuck in his mind.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Every cop I know says, listen, we never want to have to shoot anyone. Like, that's never anything any good cop says, right. Ooh, I hope that happens today. Right. And God forbid it happens or you have a situation where there is a threat. You have to defend yourself. You have to protect people. Guess what? I agree with you, Vincent. And every cop tells me, you remember every single detail, almost like it's in slow motion, yep. Even though it's not at all. So it really bothers me that he seems so keyed up in this reenactment, and he does give inconsistent statements, and that's one of the places that he's inconsistent. It just isn't what he said at the time. So why would it have changed that much?
Right. And, you know, one of the things I've said on my podcast so many times when I'm talking about police situations and escalations is, like you said, it's almost in slow motion. It's like you could actually rewind an old VHS tape and you can still see it in your mind. And listen, there's situations I was in back in my days in policing, and I assure you, when it was the pucker your cheeks moments, I can still remember those like it was yesterday, Ashley. I haven't forgotten it, and I find it really strange that, 4 hours later, I don't know if he was hit, but during the 911 call, yeah, he's hit 3 to 4 times. We want to listen to testimony from Jimmy Polma, who is a firearms expert. He testified during the trial. Let's take a listen.
It's a Jimenez Arms pistol, semi-automatic pistol.
And what is the caliber?
It is .380 auto caliber.
And if you will, please detail any examinations that you performed on that .380 pistol, sir.
Yes, what I did first was I examined it for safety, made sure that the safety was working. There was nothing unusual about the firearm. And then I obtained test fires from the gun. I took the firearm down and test fired it into the water tank.
Is this gun on the more expensive end or the cheaper end of firearms?
Oh, no, these are cheaper firearms.
They're very inexpensive?
Yes, inexpensive.
And while it's a functional firearm, did any of those 6 casings that were .40 caliber match that gun?
No, they did not.
And was there any firearms evidence that was submitted that is associated with that firearm, the .380?
No, I did not have any fired components that I had to compare to this particular pistol.
All right, Ashley, so that was testimony there from the firearms expert. And what I took out of that, the very last statement there, did any of the .40 caliber shells match the gun, the Jimenez .380, which of course it wouldn't. You have a .380, you have a .40 caliber, 2 different types of shells. But I assume the testimony line of questioning there was to prove that Corey Jones never fired the gun. Otherwise, this is just dry testimony.
Right, absolutely, and that the safety was actually on, so he could not have ever fired the gun. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, we know there's testimony that the defendant in this case states that he thought he saw a laser, and so there's more testimony about whether or not there was a laser on the gun. But my point is, I think his perception, or what he says his perception was of what happened, which was threat, laser, shooting, didn't happen. Couldn't have happened with the safety on a gun.
Well, we definitely know Corey Jones didn't fire the gun. And listen, a .380 is not a very big gun, to say the least. So for Raja to have seen that gun, I mean, I personally think there was some close proximity there that we don't know about, something that Raja didn't say in his statement. That's just my opinion. That is not the belief of the Law and Crime Network. But I've been in those situations, and I can articulate, I can talk to close combat situations, and a .380 handgun is really about the size of the palm of my hand. So if Corey Jones is already out and starting to back away and run, as Raja said, yeah, I find that some of his statements there to not be credible. Again, that's just my opinion. But let's hear the opinion of the crime scene investigator who actually took a look at the crime scene.
Safety. You saw that there was a safety on the firearm, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the safety, you know where it's located, right? It's on the left side, isn't it? It's on the left side.
It would be on the left side.
Right. Which would be what a right-handed person would hold in order to easily engage and disengage the safety, right?
With their right thumb.
Yes.
Yes.
A left-handed person, you can't do it. You'd have to completely turn your thumb over and do it, right?
Right. I'm not sure the exact mechanics of somebody might go about doing that, but it wouldn't be as simple as flicking their thumb.
You also testified that in the box that contained that the Jimenez firearm had been, that was in the glove compartment, there was a trigger lock in there?
There was a trigger lock, a pair of keys, a magazine. The manual was not in there.
The manual was on the floorboard.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Also, when you retrieved Mr. Jones's firearm, it was loaded. The magazine was loaded, wasn't it?
The magazine had ammunition. The chamber was clear.
Right. So it was a loaded gun.
There are different ways to define a loaded gun. Some require the gun to be properly in battery with the round in the chamber. In that case, the gun contained ammunition, but there was no ammunition in place ready to fire.
Okay, so that was testimony from the crime scene investigator there that responded on the day of the shooting of Corey Jones. Actually, I want to talk about these shell casings here because one of the things I noticed during Raja's video statement is he attempted to recreate the shooting, and you and I both know that's impossible. You can't recreate something that escalated to oh crap that fast. You just can't do it. But he talked about how these shell casings could bounce around once they hit concrete. Not only that, they could be kicked around while Raja is chasing after Corey Jones. So my point is here, we don't know exactly where Raja is standing when he fires upon Corey Jones, but more importantly, what difference does it make at this point other than to either corroborate or discredit his story?
I think that's the only difference it makes, and arguably an important difference. Now, first of all, they can bounce. Shell casings do, right? They don't just land and sit right where they landed. Right. The second thing that adds weight to what you're saying about they could have been kicked, remember, it's dark when all of this is happening. So to assume that it's just happened and they then bounced and stayed where they were, you can't make that assumption because it's dark outside. This is all chaotic. He doesn't, in fact, know exactly what he's shooting or how he's shooting him. And so I think that's the significance, is to credit or discredit, because he's saying he's in a certain area, and I think where those shell casings are can support that he might have been in that area, or that there's no way that's where he was when he fired those shots as the defendant in this case.
Right, and to your point, too, not only was it dark, I mean, in a life and death situation, you're not going to say, well, I know there's a shell casing to my right, so I need to step to my left to avoid it as I'm still trying to chase this guy who has a gun and who's trying to kill me while I'm saying drop the gun, while I'm calling 911 because I don't have my radio. There was just so much going on here, Ashley, and I think we can all agree that had Newman Raja practiced what he preached, because he was teaching at a local college about police tactics and police safety, had he practiced what he preached, Corey Jones would be alive today. No doubt in my mind. What say you?
I agree with you completely. You know, I had a time when we were traveling on the interstate and some snow that was frozen on the car blew off. Somebody pulled us over with a flashing light. Do you know it was not law enforcement? Right. It was somebody else that had a flashing light. My point is, it made it very dangerous for all involved. This defendant, this law enforcement officer, started out dangerous by doing it the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I mean, I can remember several women that were raped and several murders of people with flashing lights, and people would pull over for them and they weren't actually the police. And I mean, Newman Raja didn't even have that on his vehicle. He just had a plain white van and an inside-out T-shirt. We're going to take a quick break. We have so much more of a recap in the Newman Raja trial. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned to the Law and Crime Network. We'll be right back.